So I want to welcome everybody to this sixth edition of the Humpty Project, and I welcome you to this episode where we feature Jordan Yates. One of our objectives is to motivate and inspire, and I'm sure whatever Jordan shares, she's going to motivate and inspire you. And I'm motivated to step up my game because she's a professional podcaster, and I'm just cutting my teeth on this stuff. But I'm honored, Jordan. You're a marketing engineer, a YouTuber, and host of a podcast called Failing for You.
Yes.
You graduated with an ME from Texas Tech University, and you're currently a marketing engineer with Knowles Precision
hmm
Devices. Prior to that, you were a technical sales engineer with an industrial automation and controls distributor.
hmm
And from what I've read, you aim to make manufacturing and engineering topics more relatable, more exciting, and more digestible. So I say to everybody out there, if you're not following Jordan on LinkedIn, you should be. I'll share her LinkedIn profile here and I'll share it again later, along with other ways to reach Jordan at the end of the episode. So, in a moment, I'll ask you, when did you decide to enter the world of engineering? What prompted you to decide to pursue an education? And I'll share my quick backstory, and that is I was 14, 13 years old in the mid 70s when handheld calculators and digital watches were coming out. I was absolutely fascinated by these things. They even packed the digital watch my dad bought in water. It's like,
hmm
wow, they sent it to him in a thing of water. And these calculators could do all four functions, plus, minus, and divide and multiply. And it was fascinating. I wanted to be in the electronics industry, pursued a technical education in trade school concurrent with high school, and have been working since I was 17 years old. I started as a lab tech and a I was an assistant design engineer actually at 17, designing
Well,
transformers and toroids. So I wanted to be in this business, and I pursued it from I guess from my 14th year. I pursued it with a technical education. So tell everybody, Jordan, when did you get the fire to land in the engineering world? Engineering degrees are typically not what most women are pursuing. So please.
yeah, I love that you actually wanted to do this from a young age because I feel like everyone that ends up in this industry is like, oh, it happened by accident. So I think that's actually so cool that you did it on purpose. So good for you, guys. That's super cool.
Thanks.
So for me, I guess I'll take it back to when I'm 13, 14-ish. It's kind of when I started working. So when I was younger, I worked as a welder helper with my stepdad. He had a welding business. And so got to use lots of tools, help him build metal buildings and fences and things like that because I wanted to earn money. And so I started that, I think 13, 14 years old. And then just worked like ever since then, things like lifeguarding, JC Penney's, like anything and everything. Like I've always been working, which is funny because the other day someone asked me, hey, like you seem like you have so much experience even though you're only 24. And I'm like, yeah, well, I've been working for 10 years. So I've been going. But anyways, back to your question. So I didn't ever think I wanted to be an engineer. I actually really wanted to be a psychologist. So my parents got divorced at a young age, and I always thought it was like interesting understanding people, the way they think. And I always found psychology to be fascinating. Well, I'm about 17 years old at the time, and it's going into my senior year and thinking I need to decide what I want to study. And I'm like, I'm going to be a psychiatrist. I'm going to go to TCU and I'm going to get a psychology degree. Mind you, my family did not have money. Like we could not afford TCU. Like it is a private school. Like my parents didn't go to college. Like nobody in my family had educations like at all. So I didn't really have like an actual thing to look up to. I just knew I wanted something. And my brother-in-law was working in the oil and gas industry as a pumper. And he would come home and be like, man, these petroleum engineers, like they made six figures as soon as they started. Like they just make so much money and they're honestly not that smart. And I was like, oh, damn, like I want to do that. Like I want to make six figures after only 4 years of school. And I was pretty strong in pretty much like every subject. Like I had a very even score, like, was a straight A student. So it was kind of like I could have gone any direction, but I always thought math was really fun. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to be a petroleum engineer. So I'm not going to give you the whole story of how I picked a college because that's a funny story, but save that for another day. I decided, I'll go to Texas Tech. I wanted to study petroleum engineering, but I was being practical because I knew that industry was cyclical. And so I decided to mechanical because any mechanical can do petroleum jobs, but it's not always vice versa. So I took the safe route and then did mechanical engineering. I did oil and gas internships through school, graduated in 2020, and then ended up in the worst oil and gas downturn in a while. And so that's how I ended up in industrial manufacturing. So not really like a super inspirational story. It was like I wanted to be financially stable. I knew a quicker route to get there. And instead of choosing passion, I chose realism, I guess. And then I just decided to make it enjoyable. And I was like, this is the route I chose. Like, I don't have to make it boring just because it's, a stereotypically boring career,
Well, it's really interesting because each time I've hosted somebody, I find there's commonality, things that I didn't expect. So we didn't have a long prep session, just shared a few notes through LinkedIn. And no one in my family went to school. My stepfather had, I think, a couple years of college, but nobody in my immediate family outside my stepfather had went to college. And I was supposed to be the one. I was the one with the great grades and all the advanced placement. And they were so disappointed when I went into the technical school. I still studied AP courses and college prep courses alongside, but I had zero intention of going to school. I wanted to be independent and on my own. And it wasn't necessarily a passion. I think I just sensed that there was this new thing happening,
Yeah.
like we see today, maybe industrial 4.0 or even 5.0. I just sensed something about that uh, electronics revolution that I was witnessing firsthand. And I just wanted to be part of it. It looked exciting.
Yeah.
And while we're talking today, it jogged my memory a bit as to why I'm doing some of this. I believe pandemic came upon us and we were all forced to interact more virtually. We couldn't do those face-to-face things. And I started ramping up my online profile. And I sense that we're at a point now where we almost have an obligation in our business to be much more active on social media rather than just sharing simple product specs or other things. I use it
Yeah.
as a way for people to get to know who I am. Now, some people may not like some of what I post, but it is who I am and it's what's important to me. And I sense something there too. And that's why I'm kind of diving into this both feet first. So I think it's interesting. I've sensed lots of things I've been wrong about too. So,
Yeah, we
but
only learn by doing. So it's
yeah,
sometimes
just
can be cringy, especially when we're putting ourselves out there online and we fail so publicly. But honestly, I don't think people are paying close enough attention to notice as like particularly as we do. So it's all
we
good.
are always self-critical, aren't we?
hmm
So, well, you're a bit of a unicorn, a younger person in our industry. We talk a lot in the electronics components industry about how do we recruit and retain younger people. And
hmm
I did an episode 2 episodes ago, 2 episodes past, and it was called "Wear the Damn Earring," about how we don't tend to have a lot of diversity of look and expression in our business, and
Yeah.
very little diversity of gender and color as well.
hmm
So I find us to be a little bit of a stuffed shirt sort of industry, but you are a bit of a unicorn. And I wonder what advice you offer for parents that have children that are looking for STEM education. How can the parents help cultivate that interest or guide their children, particularly girls, into a STEM education?
Yeah, I guess it's not so much about guiding them into one as it is exposing them to it and allowing them to realize they have the choice.
Yeah, good
Because like
point.
in high school, it's like, the engineering club is weird. You don't want to do it because that's where all the weird boys are. So it's like, sure, there has to be like the first girl that goes and has the representation, but I think it's just like a matter that maybe it's not necessarily we need more women in engineering. We just need more like exposure for women if they want to do it. Because I mean, a lot of women, become nurses and teachers, and that's just because like more naturally that's what they're drawn to. And I guess engineering isn't something that naturally draws women as much, and it could be because of what it is. It could be because we don't have enough representation. But I would say maybe just like if a parent thinks like, I'm going to show my daughter like all these different careers, I want to show her like nursing or teaching, like maybe also expose engineering as well and show them it's an option for them. We can't help what girls like to do or don't like to do. And same thing for boys. Because like for boys going into nursing, like it's such a small amount that they're almost discouraged. And my older sister's a nurse and my younger brother's studying to become a nurse. And he's talked about like, it's so weird, being the only boy. And it's funny that we're the opposite. He did a woman dominated thing, I did a man dominated field. And so I guess just giving them opportunity and just kind of exposing them, but it also takes like the parents knowing about it or what to show them. But luckily kids nowadays can get basically any information at their fingertips with like all of the YouTube videos and things like that. So I guess I don't know, I'm not a parent. It's kind of hard to say because I imagine parents have a lot of other like worries more immediately than like what their 5-year-old's going to be in 15 to 20 years. So I don't know if I'm the best person to give that advice, but I guess just let them know it's an option.
Right. And I think your correction of me was well placed. You can't really guide them into something. I'm a
Mm-hmm.
parent. My son will be 31 this year. My daughter will be 28. And I can say from experience, you really can't guide them to do anything, but you can
Yeah.
expose them to a lot. And I remember we did that with my son through various sports. He never
Mm-hmm.
really liked many of them until he became a runner. And he was a very accomplished track runner, and that was
Yeah.
his passion. And my daughter, we exposed her to any number of things, and she became a really accomplished cheerleader,
Mm-hmm.
tumbling and so forth. So you're right, it's about exposure, but many people don't even consider STEM or even finding resources that such as maybe FIRST Robotics and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to raise a question about the Black Girls Do Engineer Corporation as well, but many parents may not know such things exist and be able to expose
Yeah.
their kids, boys or girls, either
Yeah.
way. And I have an 18, well, probably 19-month-old grandson right now, and I'd want him to know about FIRST Robotics because the chance of making money and being successful as an athlete is pretty small.
Yeah.
But if you get yourself an engineering degree or a technical degree or learn a skilled trade, that's that's going to provide you the sustainable income you need to live on your own over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's cool to find a way to expose them. And that's why I like having my YouTube channel because I feel like it's a good way to subliminally show women in STEM because I'm not like, hey girls, let's girly girl STEM stuff. Like it's not like, I'm trying to get all the girls to do it, but it's like I'm giving the representation by simply existing and doing it because there isn't really like a lot of female engineering YouTubers, not that I've come across. A lot of times like the engineering YouTube videos are either men or like foreign men, and it just doesn't feel as relatable to like, maybe young American girls. And so, or boys even, so that's why I feel like having my channel just kind of makes engineering a little less intimidating because I share as I'm learning too. Like when I first got into soldering, I uploaded literally the video I took was my first time ever soldering in that moment, and it was so
Oh, wow.
bad. But it was like I did that because I wanted to show them, I'm an adult, but I still suck. So like I'm sure these kids could do better, but I just like to try to make it not seem so intimidating and that like it's okay to start off being bad. Like we'll get better as we go. And I've gotten pretty good. So I mean, it just takes practice.
Been a while since I've soldered.
Yeah,
I'm
it
pretty
just it bothers my throat sometimes though, because like I'm bad and I like to use leaded solder. And
uh,
so there's not enough ventilation in the world for it to not irritate your respiratory system. So when I teach, I use lead free because
right.
I'm a good teacher, but I'm a bad student. So
Okay. Well, you tell us more about that. I know that I think it was the end of April, you supported a soldering camp for Black Girls Do Engineer. And I noticed it's a Houston-based organization. I didn't see that
yes.
they have any chapters anywhere. And I
Hmm.
just wanted to find out a little bit more about that. And we'll be asking you offline if you can connect me to someone there
Yeah.
because I'd like to learn more and see what it takes to help spread that with chapters throughout the country as well. But just tell us a little bit more about that day or the time you spend with that organization.
Yeah, so it was kind of like one of those things where all the stars aligned back in, I think it was November or December when I first moved to Houston. I don't know if you're familiar with Nikki Gonzalez, but she's kind of like a, LinkedIn influencer. And her
Automation
and
ladies.
yeah, so her and I had been kind of LinkedIn friends for a while, and I posted something about moving to Houston, and she's like, "Hey, can I call you?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." She calls me and she's like, "I'm supposed to MC a event this weekend for an award ceremony for the Black Girls Do Engineering, but I have this family crisis going on. Like, this is crazy. I've never met you, but can you step in?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got nothing better to do." So I went and did that, and my friends were like, "Why are you going? You're not Black." And I was like, I don't know. Like, I'm a girl. Like, maybe that counts. I don't know. Like, I'm not joining the program. Like, I'm just helping facilitate a ceremony. So I went and did that. And you see all the women on the panels, and of course, not all of them are Black, because the point isn't that they only want Black women to do engineering. It's that their founder, Cara, she's a Black woman in engineering, and she wanted to create representation that she didn't have as a kid. So she focused in on that group of her demographic. But of course, you go to volunteer events, there's men and women of every race that is there helping, because it's more about that like goal of helping Cara and what she's trying to do. And you don't have to be a Black woman to help. So after I got more comfortable with that and learned that, I saw they had a STEM day coming up. I think it was in February. And they were going to do all these different stations, like making slime, robots, like little scratch programming. And I was like, hey, I've been really into soldering lately, and there's got this good, like, instant gratification component to it. I think this would be a super cool hands-on way for the girls to get exposed to electrical engineering. Can I, run a booth? And if yes, I will find a way to get it all sponsored, because obviously I'm not going to make her life more difficult. So she said yes, of course. And so I started fundraising on LinkedIn and was like, hey guys, so I just committed to this. It's in like a month and a half. I need, basically like $5,000-$6,000 worth of stuff to make this happen. And the LinkedIn community, they made it happen. They got everything we needed and more. And so we had most of the supplies to where the one last month was basically fully funded. We just needed a few more kits for the like new camp. And so that was only, a few $100 mission. Got it accomplished, thankfully, to LinkedIn. And all I did was show up and teach, like it's just crazy, like having community support for a good cause. It goes such a long way when everyone helps.
Yeah, that's a lot of interesting points there. I found it interesting when you said that some of your friends thought, well, Nikki's not Black either, but
No, she's
I
not.
met Nikki. I had the opportunity. I was happy to meet her in
OMG, she's so great.
AHTD
Yeah, yeah.
conference in what is it, La Quinta, California.
Uh-huh.
So I met her this past fall, and if there's not people of other demographics assisting these communities that have been underserved, then it's going to be a longer, harder road for them to get into the engineering community. And part of what I see in the electronics components business is that we're talking about always going to the college and recruiting from colleges. But if they haven't been exposed to soldering, engineering, aren't aware of it, like you said earlier, if they're not exposed to it when they're younger, a lot less likely they're ever going to be coming out of that college program with the types of skills that companies in our business are looking for. So I think we have to plant those seeds much further, much earlier than we currently are. And I think that's a great organization. First Robotics is another
Mm-hmm.
great example of doing that. Have you been involved at all with First, or at least you're aware of it?
No,
I think, right?
I
I
I
think I saw
am
a post where
aware.
you were like, I want to go see this.
Yeah, no, I definitely wanted to. So that's the thing. People always ask, like, why are you just involved in this organization? And it's just because Cara made it easy. And so, like, that's the thing. If you want people to be involved, make it easy for them to help you. And so helping them is always so simple. And I would volunteer for other organizations. I just don't really know any. So it's more
Right.
of like if somebody comes and asks me, then I'll probably say yes if it's local. But I just don't like know any, and I just know them. So anytime I have an idea, I'm just like, I'm gonna take it to them because they're who I know. So it's become, I'm not gonna say convenience thing, but it's definitely like they're there. I know them, it's set up. I know it's a great program. So if I have the time and resources, I go. But I'd love to be involved in other things as well, helping other children or whatnot. Like I'm not only dedicated to that. Like I'd help anyone.
Part of what I have a passion for outside of this and some other things is Microsoft Excel. Now,
Okay.
I read that Chat GPT is going to replace all of that knowledge, but we'll see. But I have a real passion for analyzing data,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of see it as a Rubik's Cube. And I'm sometimes stunned when I talk to any number of colleagues and they're not interested in learning the latest formula that I just watched on YouTube. But I know that having an analytical, really a curious mind is the way I look at it. It's not just understanding the formulas, but it's how to organize the data. How can you use all of that to really get not only useful formulas and results, but actionable. What can you do
Mm-hmm.
to actually grow your business or improve your customer service or improve a
Yep.
process? How can you use the data wisely? So I'm always looking for people that are interested in tutoring, guidance. And I've been thinking about maybe I'll just pop on live one day on LinkedIn and just say, we're going to go through the basics of Excel, whoever wants to follow. But I actually
Mm-hmm.
enjoy that. I wouldn't dare, it's been so many years since I saw it. I wouldn't dare go there. And I was the type
Such
of
a setup
student.
too. So much like in recording, it's such a pain because like I have to get my camera set up in a certain way and the lighting and like that's why I like you said, setting things up, processes and optimizing. Like I just realized like a reason that stunted my content creation has been my setup has been such a pain to do it. So this morning I reorganized my whole office to where now my main desk is what's in front of my background to make filming easier because I used to bring a mobile one over here and leave my
Uh,
main desk over there. And so, yeah, just like making your environment a little easier helps streamline everything else.
yeah, and I'm working the same here. My work office is at home, and I have a slightly different arrangement. If I remember, I haven't done this too many times, but if I remember, I put the computer up on the higher desk point to get a little better
Mm-hmm.
view because I found it's kind of staring up at me and it's not
Yeah.
ideal. I remember I first painted this wall. I intend to do something with that wall, but I don't know yet. I don't want to do the virtual background though, Jordan,
Yeah.
because with my bald head, it just kind of gets squirrely and it looks kind of odd.
I feel
Uh,
you. My
so
hair gets frizzy, so I have the opposite
okay,
problem.
so tell me, this whole content creation, social media, when did that begin in earnest for you?
So it started when I was about 19 or 20. I was working for a oil and gas service company and I was tasked with getting meetings with facilities engineers at upstream oil and gas companies. Meanwhile, I have like a quarter of an engineering degree. I don't know anything about the industry. I'm just eager. And so I'm like, I obviously don't have a book of contacts to reach out to. This company was tiny, so they didn't really either. And so I was like, how do I connect with professionals? Well, I don't even remember how I figured out LinkedIn. Maybe it was like a Google search or something, but I was like, this is the place. Like, these are the people I want to talk to. They're just right there. All I have to do is connect with them. Right. And so I got started there and then had a bit of a following and I wasn't posting really. I'd post like a, hey, look, I'm out at the drill site or something, like just, something real cute. And then eventually, when I became a sales engineer, was when I realized, like, oh, this could be very powerful in building like the brand awareness and association between my products and I, or should I say my company's products, because we also had poor brand awareness. And so it was more of that like motivation to not have to cold call and explain and cast a wider net where people would come to me. So that's how I got started in it. And then it just built and came to the snowball of other stuff where now I'm no longer in sales, like I'm in marketing and I don't even really post anything for the company I work for, but my page sort of became an inspiration to where people started asking to pay me to do the same thing for them in their company. So it
Right.
it just happened so naturally. Like it was just one of those things, you show good work and then people are like, I want that. Like, do that for me. I will give you money. I'm like, all right, I'm incorporating an LLC. Let's do this.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been following all of that, and it's interesting to see the progression of some of the people that you've from some of your clients that are getting in front of the camera for the first time.
So
People have
cute.
told
It's the
me,
cutest
yeah,
stuff.
people have told me I have a radio voice, but also a radio face. I'm not as
Oh,
comfortable in
love
front of
that
the
one.
camera. Um, you have to worry about the position you're sitting in and the angles. And
Especially
my
with
wife will always tell
glasses.
me, keep your hands away because you look like you have massive hands when they're up there. So I'm always self-conscious about everything. But I did buy a nicer microphone, and uh, I, I rather enjoy it, although it's been uncomfortable putting myself out there, and it's been raising questions in my mind as to whether I'm going to actually cause harm in my career. My company I work for, Cruise, knows that I do this, and I
Yeah.
often put I often put disclaimers that everything I say is not endorsed or sponsored by my company. But I really believe that we're at an inflection point with not only the use of social media,
Mm-hmm.
but it just stands to reason to me, and I'm curious if you have any thoughts on this. It stands to reason to me that we're seeing such a rapid acceleration of technology. Granted, we've seen things rapidly accelerate, but it really is in an exponential phase. And I think AI and automation in general is only going to accelerate that, and it's going to continue to be rapid. And I really believe that we're going to be forced to have societal changes evolve quickly too. And there's a lot of resistance to that. I won't go down all of those paths with you,
Mm-hmm.
but there's really quite a resistance, especially among the more executive older white male type. It's like social
Mm-hmm.
media is inappropriate to say anything other than talk about your company and
Yeah.
things like that. So I think we're at that inflection point, and it also goes to the work from home or hybrid workforce. There's Our company has a hybrid policy. I'm seeing more and more saying it's time you've got to all come back to the office. And I think the smart companies are going to be the ones that recruit and retain people because they offer some flexibility. Granted, you can't run a machine. You can't be a doc,
Yeah.
you can't run triage in the emergency room from home, but there are certain jobs that I think we'll have to come to an understanding that can be performed either remote or hybrid. And I think
Mm-hmm.
social media is also in the cusp of major changes, and we'll see if the metaverse ever evolves and so forth. Any thoughts around that somewhat rambling
Yeah, no, I get
stream
what
of consciousness there?
I get what you're saying, because you would expect more resistance, from your demographic or, older than you, because, it's the whole good old boys club, or like way things are, we like to keep it that way. But I would say you have to give that generation a little more credit, because it's real, like they're just people as well. They've been in this so long. Sure, some of them are like, the way it is, it's fine. But a lot of the people that I get the most support from are honestly that demographic. They really seem to like me. And I think it's more of a seeing is believing. Like they just want to see it in action and prove it before they put resources into it. And so that's like a big point of where I talk about the whole you can do it yourself thing. Like my entire business, like I use my iPhone camera, I use like a $20 software to edit. Sometimes, like when I first got started, I wasn't even editing. I would just post a raw video. And it's like, I try to make it relatable in the sense that, like, guys, if this is something you want to try, it's pretty low risk, low investment. Now, if you hire me to do it, I'm not doing it for free. I will charge you. But the thing is, I think they're realizing that it's not as scary as they think. But then there's people like my old employer where the CEO was like so thrown off by the fact I had my own YouTube channel, and was like, he got overwhelmed by the implications that I was becoming more popular than the company. That
Right.
freaked him out, and he was like, you need to shut it down right now. Like you just need to stop, delete everything you've done. Like this is totally not okay. Even though the marketing manager said it was okay, my boss said it was, everyone at the company loved it except for him, because he didn't understand it. He was nervous and he felt like he couldn't control it. And so there is that demographic as well. And that was a huge reason of why I left the job, was because I just didn't see room for growth in a company where the very top is so limiting. And even though I was doing everything for the company and the company's brand, it just wasn't a good fit. So I think it's so situational on the person. And we just have to give them time to catch up, and we need to prove the concept before we are just like, you need to do this now, before they can see why. So as long as we lead a good example as to why this is a good idea, I think they'll come along. It just takes time.
agree. I shouldn't generalize. And if I was, that's always a mistake. There's a lot of people who are more progressive in their thinking and curious, even as they've been in the business 30 or 40 years. And I think just making it comfortable, making things relatable like you do is really a huge step forward. I remember I don't think I was on LinkedIn or Facebook or any social media until 2008. The company I was working for said we're going to spin off and sell your division. And I said, boy, I better get out there and start networking. And I've heard of this LinkedIn thing.
Yeah.
So that's when I started. And I just kind of dabbled with it. And it was always the professional network. And you just showed your professional side. And maybe Facebook is where you showed your pictures at the beach or something.
Hmm.
And I've started to mix it up more. And I think as people become comfortable seeing others doing it, or they see it successful within other businesses within their industry, I think it's just a natural. Uh, but I was one of those proud men, Jordan, that would dig in and say, I
Hmm.
have it figured out. I don't need to
Yeah.
change. Everybody needs to change around me and adapt to me. And that, that would even go toward sexist or insensitive jokes and things
Hmm.
like that. It's like it's just a joke. Why should I change? Stop it.
It's
It's
even harder when it's funny.
yeah, it's funny. So come on, just grow a thicker shell here. So I try not to generalize as much, and I still fall into that trap.
It's
But,
hard
but
not to when you're a data person, because like I'm the same way. It's like when you look at a group of data and you analyze it, it's like you should be able to make generalizations based on data. That's all you're doing. It's not like you're offending groups of people. I just like to separate and get a bit more granular, and that's why I like to be like, you know what, I know it's different on a case by case, but also like, yes, in general that is how the demographic is, but it takes time to crack the generalizations, because like they are a generalization for a reason. It's not like you're just making shit up and saying
yeah,
it.
well, you've probably heard the term liars figure and figures lie. You
Uh-huh.
might not have, but data can be looked at and interpreted by everybody differently. We can all look at it and find a way for it to justify what what we want it to justify and to or to emphasize and embellish those points and take attention from other areas we don't want to show off. So having a more diverse way, other people looking at data or subsets of groups of people, it's always really important to me. And I actually was honored to be not hosted by Sana Vindig, who I know
Oh
you
my God,
know
I love her. She's
because
so
you and
good.
Mary Ellen and her knocked it out of the park at ERA.
I'm
And I was the
obsessed with
one who
them.
kind of took over your meeting a little bit. Santa did a session on data and inclusivity, which I was honored to speak to, and it was actually kind of fun because it forced me to think about how do I actually look at data? Do I
Hmm.
do I look at it as black and white? And I really don't. I used to think of it that way: 1 + 1 = 2. It's math. That's the data. But there's so many different ways to look at it. And when I look at it one way, somebody else is looking at it from the marketing point of view. The person in product management is maybe looking at it for profit. So I think it's always best to be curious, have an open mind, always be learning. And we're coming to the end of the scheduled time here. Is there
Hmm.
anything you'd like to share or anything uh, that that you can recommend? And then finally, how can people get in touch with you? I will post something up in this goes up as a podcast and also a video podcast. So I'll post something in the image and in the show notes. But anything you want to share about how people can get in touch with you? Any final thoughts?
Yeah. So I would guess I want to end on a controversial note for fun.
Oh,
So
good.
I would say I know that there's this wave of inclusivity, diversity, and things to where like the white men in the generation of yours feels like they're getting pushed out, and that like you have to behave a certain way because there's these new standards. Like I would say don't don't feel less valuable just because we're adding diversity in. You guys have done an awesome job holding down the fort for the last 100 years, and we're not discrediting you. We're just finding a way to invite more people into the industry, but don't feel less than or that you ever have to down yourself because of your demographic. That's the whole point, is that like we want there to be equal opportunity. but you are not equal because you've been in this for so many years and you earned your spot. You know things, you're knowledgeable. So just because, you know, you guys are the old white guys or whatever, like don't down yourself. You guys are doing amazing and you're there for a reason. And as the industry gets more diverse, just know that like you're still just as valuable and important, because that's like, you know, you've earned your place. So don't feel the need to apologize for taking up space.
Yeah. Well, if you've watched some of my other episodes and the one I posted just last night, you'll note that there are many controversial statements in some of them. So I actually enjoy a little controversy. I'm glad we added a little spice at the end of it. But are you going to EDS?
No, I don't
No,
go to things
bummer.
unless they're in Houston and they're convenient. I'm a busy
Ah,
girl. I can only take so
oh,
many
I
days
know.
off work.
Well, EDS is the big summit. I suppose Dawn
Dawn will
Manhart
probably
will
be
be
there.
there for
Yeah.
sure. So I would have looked forward to seeing you then, but I really appreciate you taking the time. And I wish you a fantastic day and look forward to running into you at some industry event soon, if not something else.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank
Thanks
you.
again.
Of course.